Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So in today's tutorial we're going to go over how character encoding work. So imagine that you have a CSV file and you might try to read the CSV file and you might get an error that there is an error with the encoding type that is being used, and that sometimes can occur. It is rare, but it can occur sometimes. So if it occurs, you must be able to deal with such situations. So in this tutorial I'm going to go over and cover how to deal with different character encodings. So in the last tutorial we did about how to pass dates. Okay, so if you are new to the channel and you haven't watched that video on the how to pass dates, you can go ahead and watch that video. And if you're new to the channel, please kindly consider subscribing and liking this video. Most of you guys, I noticed you haven't yet subscribed the channel, and but you're watching the content. So one way you can help and join the community is kindly go ahead, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you can get new updates whenever I upload new videos. Okay, so if you enjoyed the tutorial so far, also drop a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what I'm doing wrong and what I'm doing right, and how I can help you guys more. So let's get started today. So I'm going to go ahead and deal with character encoding. So as I said, sometimes you try to read the CSV file from the memory and you find that you're having encoding issues, or you're having an error due to the way the file was encoded, because whenever you're trying to read a file, you have to specify the encoding method that was used to encode the file when the file was being saved. So you have to match the encoding, else you get an error. So in this tutorial we're going to go over how to do that, which is called character encoding. So to understand character encoding, the first thing we'll take a look at is how text encoding works in Python. So basically, computers did not understand numbers. So if you have computers don't understand textual data. So if you say, for example, you have a textual data called hello or hello world, a computer does not understand what hello world means or cannot store hello world. So it needs to encode this into a format that it can store, and that is where encoding comes in. And when you're trying to read the file, it also needs to decode the data and give you what was encoded. Okay, so that is what encoding and decoding is, and that's the whole concept of text encoding. So the basic unit of storage in computers is the bytes, right? You can think of bytes as the basic unit of storage, and bytes stores the textual data in form of numbers. So when you're trying to store text in programming, it's going to store that text as a form of number. So you can even, let me just bring this right here, you can even read it from here. This link, you can find this notebook on my GitHub link, and the description is So you can find this on my GitHub repository, and the link is going to be in the description. So let's get started to it. Let me just go in here, and I'm going to create a new notebook, and I'm simply going to create a Python 3 notebook, and this I'm going to simply call it character encoding. And inside of this notebook, we are going to that's where we're going to write our code for character encoding. So let me just name this into, I'm just going to say character encoding, just like that. So instead of character encoding, I'm just going to make this a markdown, and I'm just keep your character encoding, just like that. So once I have this, that's all I need to have. So we can go ahead, let me just show you that how encoding and decoding is done in Python. So let me just have a message here, which is going to be a string of hello world, just like this. So instead of hello world, that is where our we have the textual data hello world, right, instead of that variable msg. So I'm going to go ahead and encode this msg. So I'm going to say msg, I'm going to say encoded underscore msg is going to be equals to message dot encode, and I'm going to go ahead and encode this. I'm going to use the format of UTF-8. So if you're not familiar with UTF-8, it's just a format of encoding data in Python, and by default Python uses the UTF-8 by default. So even if you don't specify UTF-8 here, in the background Python will still default to UTF-8. So I'm just going to run this for now. So we have our text encoded. So let me just go ahead and print it, and let's see what we get. So we get back a byte object. So you can see we have here b in front of it, and then the hello world, and you can check the type of it. You can just do type and then type in encoded underscore msg, and if you run that, you can see it's type of byte. So if you encode the message, it will be converted into bytes, and that's what I was saying about bytes being a series of ones and zeros. And you can confirm that by converting this into a list. So I can just say encoded, I can just paste that there, and if I run this, you can see I got back a list of numbers, right? This is weird. So I had my text. Let's go over where we started from. We have a text, a variable called msg, and it just stores a string of a string containing the text hello world. So I went ahead and encoded this text using UTF-8. Whenever I print it out, I saw it was a byte. Okay, so I went ahead and checked the type, and the type was indeed byte. Whenever I converted this into a list, I get back a list of numbers. Okay, this is weird. Okay, so let's do one more thing. Let's check the length of what you have just got. Okay, so the length of this is 11. Okay, where is this 11 coming from, and why is the length 11 and not any other number? So you can go and count the text here, and this text will count up to 11, including the space. Okay, so that is whereby so each character in here has been encoded into a number. So 72 has been encoded as H has been encoded as 72, E has been encoded as 101, and then it goes on like that. And L has been encoded as 108, and you can see 108 has repeated twice because we have L, and also 108 is here, which is in the bold. So you can see L is 108 into when you convert it into the numbers. Okay, and this format is called uses the UTF-8 for this encoding. So you can just go ahead to read more about UTF-8 and how this works. So let's just click on this. Let's open this up so you can read about UTF-8 and how all it works, and the link, you can find the notebook in the description below. You can find the link in the description below, which gives you access to this notebook. So you can also go I have another link here. Let me just click on this, and let's see the formatting of UTF-8. So UTF-8 stores characters in form of numbers, which is just the encoding that is used. So you can see the different values for this encoding right here. So you can go take some time and read it and see how the UTF-8 works and how UTF-8 goes ahead encoding values. So you can see hello world, H for UTF-8 it stores H as 72. That's why here was 72, because 72 stands for capital H in UTF-8, and you can confirm this from this here. So if I go here, you can see this is 72. Yeah, so you can take some time and read more about how UTF-8 encoding works. So that's basically how text encoding works in Python. So you can also do this text encoding ourselves. So let me just go here. You can also do the text encoding ourselves. So you can just say let's say the ORD, and let's pass in H, and this return to us 72 because 72 in UTF-8 format is H, right? So if I change this to small letter H, and let's see, so small letter H will be 104. Okay, so if I go here and change this to be small letter H and then run all of this again, now you can see this now should be 104 instead of 72. But if I go back and undo that and change this back to H, now if I run this again, it should be 72. Great. So that's how you can that's how the text encoding works using the UTF-8. And let's see how you can even use this for that to encode this whole text of hello world. So I'm just going to say for character in, let me just have a string. I'm just going to say hello world, right? For each of those characters, what I simply want to do, I want to print ORD and then pass in that character. So if I run this, you can see I get back. So this is how I get back this information right here, and this is how this list is brought about. Okay, so that's how this list is brought about. Okay, that's how text encoding works, because computers do not understand text. So before you can store any information regarding text, you have to convert the text into a format that the computer can understand, and this format is typically bytes, and bytes are just numbers, storing those numbers, and these numbers are further converted into ones and zeros, which are bits that can get stored, right? Yeah, so that's how we can use text encoding. Okay, so let me just go in here and get some information that I want to explain to you. So now I have this this data, so I'm going to copy this. Now I'm going to go ahead and simply paste it here. So this data right now contains a emoji, right? So I have hello world and then followed by an emoji. So can UTF-8 encode emojis? Is that possible or is not possible? Because emojis can be a different formatting method. So let's do it and say encoded underscore text, and this is going to be text.encode. So I'm going to use UTF-8 because Python by default defaults to UTF-8. So even if you check the type of it, type of text, and run this, it types is going to be of string, right? But if I check the type of this and then run it, now it's going to be of type byte. And if I check the length of it, the length of this, the length is going to be 16. So let's go ahead and convert this into a list, and let's try to see what we get. And if I convert into a list, I got these numbers. So great. So you can see, if you compare it with this value here, you can see the last one was 100. So from here going upwards was the emoji, right? The space and then the emoji. So great. And space is actually 32. If you study data closely, space stands for 32 in the computer. So once I have that, I can simply go ahead and let me try to print this, and let's see what we get. So we got hello world, and then this, what's this? So we don't know what's this, right? So it's weird and strange that the computer has this. So one important thing you need to notice is that UTF-8 characters encoding was used to encode the text, hence we get this information. But we use the same as we use UTF-8 as well during the encoding of the text. So if you try to decode the text again using another data format, then we should get an error, because this was encoded using UTF-8, right? So let's try to decode this using another form, because by default Python defaults to UTF-8, right? So now if I try to decode this information, right, I can just go ahead and say this, and I can say decode. And if I run this, I get back the hello world. So this information right here, which is these numbers right here, has been decoded, and we get back hello world. Okay, so now let me try to decode this information using another format. So I can just say decode, and decode also uses fallbacks to UTF-8 by default, but you can also specify other encoding formats. So let's try to decode this using the ASCII format. So I'm just going to say ASCII here and try to decode it. I get an error. So because I encoded this in UTF-8, ASCII is not able to decode some of the information that has been encoded by UTF-8. That's why we're getting this error. So sometimes it might work and it might be decoded successfully, but other times it won't work. So if I just try to decode this using UTF-8, which is the default, is going to work as expected. But because UTF-8 was what was used to encode the character, so it can also be used to decode that specific character. So you can see it is being able to decode it, but ASCII has failed to decode it, because ASCII and UTF-8 has different formatting of encoding, right? Yeah, and this is how you get an error in when working with trying to read some data sets in Pandas, because the encoding that you're trying to use is not the encoding format that was used to encode the data in the first place. So that is what encoding you get these encoding errors, and you're going to learn more about encoding so that you can be able to address these errors in case you get to them. So how do I know which encoding format to use to decode my data? Like, for example, I send someone this data that I encoded in UTF-8, and the person tries to decode it using ASCII. The person gets an error. So how is the person going to know that you use a UTF-8? Now this is very, very tricky, and some you need to try many things before you can get it. But one important way you can try it out, let's go ahead and import this library. So we're going to say char det. Once we have this imported, we can just go and say chadet detect. So it's going to detect the encoding that was used. So I'm going to paste that in right here. So let me just delete the encoding part. So once I paste this right here and run this code, you can see that it said that the encoding that was used was Windows 1254, and then the confidence is, it has a 33% confidence that it used Windows 1, 2, 5, and 4, and the language was Turkish. But in that case, that's not what we use, because the language is clearly just hello world, and that's English compared to some emojis right here. So you can see it failed to detect the right encoding that we use, and sometimes it can be really tricky trying to encode and decode the data. So that's one of the challenges in data encoding, because you can't really determine by 100% which encoding format was used. Okay. So we can also encode this using different formats such as Latin 1. It can also be used. So let's go ahead and get this text right here. We call it text, right? So I'm just going to copy this value here, copy it, move down here, and I'm going to simply go ahead and paste it here. So I'm going to try to encode it, and I'm going to encode it using another format. Is going to be Latin 1. So what I'm going to encode using this format, and let me just say let me just give it this in a variable. So I'm going to say encoded underscore text, and I'm going to encode that. So it says that, okay, this is Latin 1, so Latin, and yeah. So let me check if I made any error here. So it's going to be .encode, and .encode, I'm just going to encode it in Latin 1. So that is giving me an error. It says that Latin 1 code doesn't cover characters. Okay, so because I have this emoji right here, so Latin 1 cannot encode an emoji, right? So that's why you're getting that error. So let me just make another value here. So I'm going to say text, and this is just going to be hello world for now. So run that and run this. So you can see Latin1 has been able to encode that. So let me just go ahead and try to print this out, paste it here, and then try to go ahead and print it out. So I'm just print it out. So you can see that I'm able to decode this text, right? So I want to bring back the emoji. So let me just copy the emoji. I'm going to copy it and bring it here, so I can just paste it here. So run that cell, and then I'm going to encode this using UTF-8. So I can just get rid of this or just specify UTF-8, but let me just delete it for now. So I've encoded this, and let's try this. So you guys get hello world and this thing and these other random values. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. I'm going to decode it using a different format. So when you say decode, it's going to be Latin1. So let me just try to decode this. So Latin1 tried to decode some of the text. So it managed to decode hello and world, but failed to decode the emoji, right? But if I try to go ahead and try to decode this using UTF-8, I can just paste this right here, and I can get rid of this. I can just run that again. So you can see that UTF-8 has been able to decode the value that it's encoded, but Latin1 failed to decode the emoji part of the data. It's only able to decode some parts of the data, but not the emoji part of the data. So that's how you can get error in different getting the wrong data when you are not careful which encoding format you are using. Okay, so in this case, if you're trying to use Pandas and you specify the decoding method encoding method format as Latin1, then you might get this random value which is not the actual value that you want, right? So it's very important that you understand the encoding that was used and how to decode the value that you have just encoded. So once we have this done, great. So what I want to go ahead and do and show you how we can read how you can specify the encoding in Pandas, how to specify which encoding format Pandas should use. So in the last I have some data sets here which you use in the last tutorial. So let me just go work with the passing dates .csv. Okay, so I'm going to try to read this and then specify which encoding format to use. Now we can't really know which encoding format to use, right? It's very, very difficult to know. So I'm just going to go ahead and import Pandas as PD. So run that. So once I have it, I'm going to create a data frame which is going to be pd.read_csv. So I'm going to specify the file that I want to read is passing underscore data passing dates.csv, and then I want to specify the encoding and the encoding I want to use is called ASCII, just like that. So run that, and okay, my bad, this is going to be from my data sets, right? So it's going to be data sets / passing dates. So I still get an error there, so I think the file doesn't exist. So let me go back and see. It's in data sets and then passing pass dates, not passing dates. So let me just go in here and figure out that. So once I get the spelling, I still get an error. It says yeah, okay, so data sets, let me see if I got that right. So data sets /pass underscore date. Okay, I got the spelling wrong there, so run that. So once I have that imported, you can see that I have specified the encoding format to use. So I can even go and specify as a UTF-8, and it can go ahead and read. So UTF-8 and ASCII are able to read the data. What about if I specify the Latin1? It's also that is also Latin also 1 also works. So if I do df, let me see if I'm getting the data that I expect to. Yeah, and I'm getting the data that I expect to. So if I UTF-8 and run that, yeah, I get the data that I want to. So using ASCII, UTF-8 or Latin works for this data set, but in some data sets, like if you bring in an emoji, you'll be getting an error or you'll be getting the wrong specification. So this is how you can go ahead and specify which encoding to use. So one of the I told you that one of the disadvantages of just manually or randomly specifying a format is that you don't know which format was used, right? And how can you really know? This is really difficult, right? So one of the things you can do is read the data set and try this method. This is not 100% guaranteed to give you the data that you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this file right here, open this CSV file. So I'm going to go ahead, copy that and go in here and paste it here. So I'm going to read this as raw. Let me just read this as raw data. So inside of my raw data, what I want to do, I want to go ahead and say that results, and the results is going to be car chat.detect. So in here, what I want to detect is raw data dot read, and I want to read 100 or let me just say 1000. Okay, even 10,000 is fine. this random value which is big enough to read enough of the data. So once I run this, it says raw data. Let me get that spelling right. So copy this and paste that here. So run that. I get an error. Yeah, so I'm getting an error that it is expected the error to be it expected byte object. So what you have to read, you have to specify the mode of reading the file. And if you are new to reading files, I have a whole series on reading files on my YouTube page, so you can check that out. So I'm going to read the file as a read binary. Okay, so the R stands for read mode and then the B stands for binary mode. So if I run this again, now that error goes away. So now let me just print results and see what's inside of this. So if I run this, you can see we get, but the encoding that was used was ASCII. Okay, and then the confidence is 100% confident that they use ASCII. So if I go here, that's how I can know, and I can go here and specify ASCII here. So if I go here, I can just delete this and specify ASCII right here, so it will work. So that's one of the ways that you can know which encoding was used, but it's not 100% guaranteed to give you a good result. So this one you can try out, and depending on the results, you can go ahead and specify which encoding method to use when reading the data from the file system. Yeah, so that's all about that's all I wanted us to discuss in this tutorial. And if you like it so far, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos like this. Okay, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.